Hi Biology, Mr. Wagner here, back again with some notes. Looks like we are on page 6. Let's pull up our notes that we have here. Put this down a little bit lower out of the way. Alright, so this is where we left off in our note packet on plants, structure and function of leaves and microscope use of a leaf and labeling it. So we are now at the bottom of page 6 and we're going to move on from here, talking about our notes. 3 basic leaf types. Let's talk about those. There's a broadleaf. This is what most of us think of when we think of a leaf. It's usually flat, like a rose, a dandelion, a maple, a lilac. You can have long leaves. Think of like grass. Believe it or not, grass, actually, those are the blades are actually leaves, and they're used to pick up the sunlight. So you could have a long, narrow one. A palm would be another example, an onion, a lily. Those would all be examples of long leaf structure. And the last one is needle-like or scale-like. This is like a pine tree, like you have in your Christmas trees. Pines, firs, cedars, spruces. Some of those are more like scales. All right, let's talk also a little bit about variety in leaf shape. Broadleaf leaves can be oval, elliptical. Elliptical is like an oval shape. It's a fancy word for oval. Heart-shaped, arrow-shaped, oblong, ovate, and many other types. There's some examples that are listed there for you. You can see them in your packet. And it says needle-like leaves can be single bundles, singles or in bundles. This is an important feature to use to identify them, whether they stick out as like one or they have a little bundle of 3 or 4 or whatever it might be. So it can come in lots of different shapes. Let's talk about margins, leaf margins. A margin is the edge, very similar to what we have for our paper. The margin on your paper is the edge of the paper. Let's see if we can put it over here. We can have the entire. An entire margin means that it's smooth and unbroken. That would be like the picture that says entire. You could have toothed, could be small or large teeth. Think of it like little sharp edges, like maybe the teeth of a saw. It could be lobed. A lobe means an extension that sticks out. So you can see the lobed picture there. It's kind of got these little bulges that kind of stick out a little bit. Those are lobed. And another example of lobes is it could be even more pronounced than what we have. All right, simple leaves. Difference between simple and compound leaves. Simple leaves have one blade on every petiole. One blade. That's the simple leaf. A compound leaf have more than one blade on every petiole. Compound leaves can have a variety of arrangements. So again, it seems a little bit odd, but you can kind of tell the way the compound leaf at the bottom, the base of that, matches up with the base of the simple leaf. So this would actually be a compound in which it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 leaves on it. Let's talk a little bit about examples of compound leaves. Whoopsie. Let's go back. There we go. So here's some examples. So you have an odd pinnate. You can have a triflorate. Example is the clover. You can have an even pinnate. Even simply means even numbered. Or you could have a packnate, like the horse chestnut. All right. Leaves are arranged in such a way that all leaves on a stem will have maximum exposure to sunlight. So if you ever move a pot or a plant by a window, if you very carefully watch it, you'll see that the leaves will actually shift and adjust so that it gets maximum light to it. It will actually turn, twist, and kind of rotate. In fact, if you ever watch movies where they have like islands in the tropics near the equator, the palm trees never grow almost straight up and down. Instead, the palm trees almost always grow at an angle, and the reason is the sun is over here. They grow toward the sunlight. They actually literally grow out that way. They don't grow straight up and down. Now, they'll do that in California. That's because the sun is almost directly overhead. Leaves have many different arrangements. Here are 4 kinds of leaf arrangements. Terminology note, a node is the point where a leaf grows from the stem. Let's take a look at some of these. So here is one. And it looks like this one is opposite. That's pretty easy. They grow opposite from each other. 2 leaves grow from the same node. You can see from the same spot, 2 leaves are growing. There's also a little bud there that you can kind of see. Attached at right angles to the leaves directly above and below them. Example would be the maple, the mint, and the coleus. Alternate. Alternate is only one leaf grows from each node. It usually goes to the left and then to the right, to the left and to the right. They alternate sides as they go up the branch. It's pretty easy to see there. And some examples would be the apple, the oak, and the birch. So these are alternate leaf arrangements. They alternate, one on the left, then one on the right, left, right, as they go up and down. We also have something called whorled. Whorled, you have 3 or more leaves grow from each node. Example would be the loosestrife or the Easter lily. And finally, something called the rosette, also called basil. This is a cluster of leaves that grow around the base of the plant. So a whole bunch of them. Look at all those different leaves. There's probably about 20 of them there, or even more. Usually a plant with a rosette arrangement doesn't have a stem. It usually is flat to the ground, or its stem is incredibly small. An example would be the dandelion, as we have pictured here. Let's talk about venation. Venation is the pattern of veins within a leaf. Just like we have veins in our body, leaves also have veins. The veins carry nutrients, they carry water, they carry sap to and from. And so there are different arrangements. There's parallel, where the veins are parallel to each other. There is pinnate, one major vein with smaller veins extending. We'll see some pictures in your notes there that'll make it pretty easy to understand what we're talking about. And palmate, 2 or more major veins extending outward from one point. I like to think of a palmate kind of like your palm. If this is my palm, I've got a vein here for each finger. So I've got maybe like 5 main veins, like my fingers, that would be palmate. So think of the main part is your palm. Each one of the fingers is a main vein. Let's take a look at what we're talking about for some of these examples. So the parallel, they run parallel to each other. The pinnate, one main one and a whole bunch of little ones off to the side. And the palmate, as you can tell, it's got like maybe 4 or 5 main veins that run to the different parts, usually to different lobes. Not always, but usually to different lobes. Okay, let's talk about evergreen, deciduous, and coniferous plants. Evergreens, deciduous, and coniferous. What is the difference? Evergreen, foliage remains green year-round. Deciduous, these are leaves that shed in the fall. They shed their leaves annually in the fall, so whenever a tree's leaves change colors in the fall and then all the leaves fall off, if the leaves all fall off, it's deciduous. And coniferous, they bear cones. Usually they're evergreens, not always, but usually they're evergreens. So little tiny cones in some way, shape, or form, and that's actually the seed that they use to reproduce, these cones. Some examples of deciduous conifers, and this is rare, but it can happen, where you have deciduous trees that lose their leaves every year, but they also have tiny cones. The bald cypress, the European larch, and the ginkgo. Now there's one little trick with these evergreens. Most of the time evergreens are pines or firs or pine trees. But every once in a while there are some evergreens that are tropical. Think of like a palm tree. They keep their leaves year-round. And the reason is because they don't have change in sunlight and they don't have change in temperature. They're able to keep their leaves year-round. So certain tropical plants never drop their leaves. They are evergreens. Even though usually when we think of an evergreen, we think of like a pine tree or something where it's cold and wintry. That is true, but there are evergreens that are in the tropics also. Evergreen broadleaves also exist normally in the tropics, what I just said. And let's talk about something called tropism. Tropism is a plant's response to external stimuli. Tropism, a plant's response to external stimuli. There are lots of examples of tropisms. Let's talk about some of them. So here's one, phototropism. Photo literally means light. A photograph is literally a graph of different shades of light. Remember that the first photograph was simply black and white. There was no color. So it was simply a graph of shades of different light. So phototropism literally means tropism to the light. Individual leaves will orientate themselves so that each blade is at approximately a 90-degree angle to the light. The petioles twist because there is more growth on the side that doesn't have the light. This is tropism. Again, if you take a plant and you put it near your window, and if you just rotate it, its leaves will reorientate themselves toward the window where the sun is. Movement is an example of phototropism, the growth response of a plant stimulated by light. Other tropisms. Some other common plant tropisms are hydrotropism. Hydro, of course, meaning water. So a plant's response to water, its roots will grow toward where water is. Thymotropism, it's a response to touch. Vines wrap around a pole, they're sensitive plants. So what happens is when a vine grows up, it grows up and up and up, and as soon as it finds something to latch on and it touches it, it starts to curl around. And then it starts to curl and go along that. So anything that kind of crawls and grabs onto things like ivy, other things that grab and latch on and crawl up walls. Another example of phototropism would be a Venus flytrap. It sits open, and then as soon as you have a fly land inside there and walk around and there's movement, then it closes. So it's response to touch. It opens or it closes. Geotropism, that's actually literally gravity. Geo means ground or earth. If you're studying geology, you're studying rocks of the earth. It's usually a response to gravity. Can be positive or negative. Positive, the roots grow down. Negative, the stems grow up. So you've ever wondered, how does a plant know that the roots have to go down instead of like the roots growing up in the air? Well, it knows that because of geotropism. When it starts to grow, it automatically detects where the gravity is, and the roots go down toward gravity, toward the earth, and the stalk goes the opposite direction, away from it. Or the stem, I should say. Heliotropism. Helio means the sun. So heliotropism is literally movement response to sunlight. An example would be a sunflower. So phototropism is light, response to light. Helio is specifically response to sunlight. A little bit different, but oftentimes they're the same or similar. All right. Now we got in our notes, looks like a worksheet called Leaf Anatomy. Let's take a look at that. You're basically going to color this according to what it tells you to do in your packet. So let's see if I can make it so big again. There it is. All right. So on your leaf anatomy, it should look like this at the top of page number 11. You're going to read through this description. It's going to talk about what they do. You're going to answer these questions. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them appear on the test. And then after the questions, then you're going to color in the pattern. And it tells you what color light blue is and whether or not you recognize where is A, B, and C, and D. All those are going to be back on the first page where it talks about what they are with definition, and then it tells you guard cell is labeled C, so color that C. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and color all of that, put that in, and that's as far as we're going to go in our notes today, on to page number 12. So again, colored pencils are a requirement of this class. If you don't have some, pick them up, please. And you're going to have to color that in according to the pattern that they give you. All right, take care, God bless. Great job, everybody, and we'll see you soon.